All right, it's great to see everybody today. Thanks so much for coming out and for joining us in the bright and sunny State Auditor's Office with our wonderful yellow painting. We hope you're having a wonderful day, enjoying the windy winter weather that we're having. Today, our office released an audit of settlement agreements, including the use of non-disclosure, non-disparagement, or similarly restrictive confidentiality clauses in such agreements across 75 executive offices and agencies, including the Office of the Governor, the Office of the Comptroller, Executive Office of Administration and Finance, Executive Office of Education, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, Executive Office of Economic Development, the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security, the Executive Office of Labor, Workforce Development, Executive Office of Health and Human Services, the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, and the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. This audit analyzed the period from January 1st, 2010 to December 31st, 2022. Settlement agreements exist to resolve disputes. They may provide benefit to employees and taxpayers alike by settling issues outside of costly court litigation proceedings. They may result from claims, including but not limited to discipline and termination, discrimination, position classifications, employment conditions, promotion, vacation, sick leave, or harassment. They may also be executed absent a complaint or dispute as part of a change in employment status or as part of a severance package for employees. Left unmanaged, however, these agreements can be misused to protect individuals who are the perpetrators of wrongdoing, while in some instances actually silencing employees about harassment, discrimination, abuse, or outright corruption in state government. The State Auditor's Office initiated this audit by requesting a list of all employee settlement agreements entered into by entities included in this review. Most offices and agencies did not have a system of record for settlements made with their employees, and none of them had a system that encompassed the full duration of the audit period. Accordingly, auditors had to rely on self-reporting from entities, meaning the data received may not be fully reflective of the type and number of agreements that actually exists. Offices and agencies reported that they compiled lists by reviewing legal files, human resource files, and union grievance files. Some offices and agencies appeared to conduct this due diligence, while others took many months to provide a list. Some agencies indicated that they lost the relevant records our office requested, while the Office of Governor claimed it could not access the records requested of prior administrations and that it would not inspect or provide them without the expressed permission of the prior administration. Given these challenges, the audit notes, consistent with U.S. Government Accountability Office's government auditing standards, these and other significant scope limitations encountered around the production of records required to complete this audit. Based on the self-reported information and data received, the audit found that during this audit period, the Commonwealth entered into at least 2,029 state employee settlement agreements with a total cost in excess of $40,839,000. On average, the Commonwealth entered into at least 156 state employee settlement agreements per year with an average cost of $20,128 per settlement. The number of settlement agreements that were self-reported to us by executive offices and agencies peaked in 2018 to more than 250 settlement agreements. Within the list of state settlement agreements provided, state entities claimed that only 146 of these settlement agreements contained some form of confidentiality language. We found that an additional 13 agreements containing confidentiality clauses had been executed and not reported to us. When our audit team worked to uncover whether more confidentiality clauses existed, they were prevented by doing so due to significant scope limitations imposed by the Governor's Office. Departments themselves were also unable to determine whether this language was present in 525 other settlement agreements because they indicated that they themselves did not have access to their own agency's executed settlement agreements or did not report them to the Comptroller's Office as required. Given the poor record-keeping practices regarding settlement agreements, it's possible the actual figure is much, much greater than what was actually reported to our office or to the Office of the Comptroller. Among the report's findings is that executive branch offices and agencies have no documented internal policies or procedures on the authorization, documentation, and retention of state employee settlement agreements and supporting records. Without policies and procedures for all state agencies to handle settlement agreements, the Office of the Governor cannot ensure that settlements are handled in an ethical, legal, and consistent manner in its own office or across the executive branch. This results in inconsistent processes that are not transparent to residents on how their tax dollars are being spent, as well as potential errors in financial reporting by not allowing the comptroller the opportunity to review how the department intends to process the employee settlement payment. Moreover, the audit found that executive branch offices and agencies have no documented policies and procedures over the use of confidentiality language in settlement agreements. If the Office of the Governor does not have a transparent and accountable process to restrict the use of non-disclosure, non-disparagement, or similarly restrictive confidentiality clauses in their employee settlement agreements, it cannot ensure that employee settlements are handled in an ethical, legal, or consistent manner. Now, I'm aware that just yesterday, the Office of the Governor, preemptively, in expectation of this audit's release, sent out a press release announcing policies banning the use of NDAs across executive offices and agencies, and I look forward to looking over that policy with our audit team. And as we move toward our post-audit review in roughly 6 months, the Governor's office will be given an opportunity to communicate the impact of these policies across state offices and state agencies. We certainly want to ensure that any policies implemented actually are effectuating the intended change. A lack of documented policy on the use of confidentiality language creates the risk that confidentiality language could be used to protect or obscure from public view repeated instances of poor management or inappropriate behavior at agencies of government. This perpetuates the risk that public employees may continue to face abusive or harassing treatment from perpetrators, and that taxpayers be required to pay for the costs of the settlements or litigation in connection with this behavior. The audit found entities did not report 40 settlement agreements to the comptroller when required. Failure to report settlement agreements is a violation of regulation and policy and may result in the improper reporting of the state employee settlement agreements in the state's accounting system and by the state employee to the Department of Revenue and to the Internal Revenue Service. Finally, entities provided limited or no documentation for a number of monetary employee settlements requested during the audit. This is detrimental to public trust in government regarding public dollars and how they're being managed. Also, refusal to provide settlement agreements or related records to auditors who have the legal authority to receive and analyze them under state law creates the reasonable concern that some information is being improperly or unlawfully withheld. After all, we've learned about how settlement agreements can be abused, especially since the Me Too movement. It is incredibly disheartening to know that so little has been done to curb this potential abuse of our taxpayer dollars up to this point. Secret policies that no one seems to be following are not the public policies that Massachusetts residents deserve to protect their tax dollars and ensure they're being used in an ethical and legal manner across state government. That's why I'm happy that the Governor did just release a statement of support for banning the abuse of NDAs across state agencies, alongside of making public a policy that should have been drafted and made public for accountability's sake long ago. Today is a day to celebrate meaningful action being taken on this issue, while also taking care to ensure that intentions are matched with appropriate actions, follow through, oversight, management, and enforcement. The implementation of new policies is a fantastic step in the right direction, and I'm asking that our Governor ensures that her guidance for banning NDAs in executive offices and agencies is paired with assurance that steps will also be taken to ensure these agreements are not able to be abused in quasi-public agencies, state colleges and universities, or anywhere else in state government. Certainly what's unacceptable and unethical for executive offices and agencies is also unethical and unacceptable across state government. I want to thank the governor for taking this great first significant step and invite her to join me in working to pass legislation to ensure these issues that we both care deeply about are addressed across state government. Thank you so much.
Auditor, your report only covers the Patrick and Baker administrations. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe what your office in the future would look into as far as what the Healy administration has done with NDAs over the years you were not able to review just yet?
Sure. So, to my understanding, the way that this office has operated prior to my arrival and even in the beginning of my tenure is that if there are concerns raised to our office that warrant another audit, going back and looking at the same things, that we will go back in and look at those issues. For example, elder affairs. We had some concerns that were raised about elder affairs. There were significant challenges that were found regarding elder abuse and neglect cases not being reported the way they needed to be reported to DA's offices in a timely fashion to help out our elders who are suffering. Our office, during our post-audit review, actually was told by the Office of Elder Affairs that they had actually fixed all of the concerns raised by our office's audit report. But we did have some concerns raised to us that these issues had still not been resolved. So the audit team did decide to go back in to conduct another audit of the same issues. And we actually identified that the challenges identified in that initial report had in fact and indeed not been addressed by Elder Affairs, with their fully admitting to our office that they had not done what they said that they had done. So I think it's important that that follow-up take place. That's why we have an opportunity for these post-audit reviews, and it's to give folks an opportunity in different agencies to let us know about the steps that they've taken. We obviously hope that they have taken those steps, and if there are concerns raised to us, and if we have the resources and the bandwidth, then we sometimes will go back in to check and to verify the information that's being claimed.
What types of issues do these audits, these NDAs that you encountered cover? Is this sexual harassment cases? Is this wrongful dismissal? Or do you have any idea of this?
Yeah, so there's a list actually in the appendix. I think it's Appendix A of all of the confidentiality clauses that were reported to our office. There was a sexual harassment case in there. There were discrimination cases in there, retaliation cases in there as well. But the most concerning aspect of addressing what you just raised is that we couldn't get access to 525 settlement agreements because agencies said that they had either been lost or misplaced, or they didn't know where they were for some reason. And also, we were not able to conduct our data reliability assessment that allows us to confirm the information that's being given to us by agencies and offices. So what we were being told and what actually is the case could be completely different things. We only had access to certain records that were self-reported to us, which means if an agency or office didn't want to give us a record, we won't know if they didn't give us the record, because a lot of these agencies could have been paying out of their own accounts and not reporting them correctly. As we found, many of these settlements were not reported to the comptroller's office, were not filed appropriately, and some don't even exist anymore for our inspection. So we listed what was self-reported and what agencies and offices willingly gave to us. We were not able to look at anything that folks may not have wanted to reveal to the Office of State Auditor, or that may have been destroyed or gotten lost.
In
Yes.
your opinion, what do you think will be the biggest safeguard if we do this legislation? What is the biggest point for you?
Yeah, I think that it's important to recognize that policies are a great step in the right direction, and I truly commend the governor for taking this significant step. I've been talking about this issue for, I don't even know how long at this point, years and years. I've gotten to know most of you actually through talking about this agreement as a state rep, then as a state senator. And this issue is something that, yes, is occurring in executive offices and agencies, as was covered by this report, but our office is also working on another audit currently that's looking at quasi-public agencies. It's a very similar report focused on some of the same issues. And we are seeking to address through that report what's going on in some of these quasis, for example, where we know at the Convention Center Authority there was a $1.2 million taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreement that was executed unlawfully without board approval, against their governing statute, and that was to conceal allegations of racial discrimination and retaliation. This set of policies that the governor is executing, while it's a big win in many ways, it doesn't cover necessarily these quasi-public agencies or state universities or colleges or the legislature or any other branch of government, right? So I think it's important that we recognize and celebrate the great step in the right direction and commend the governor for taking those actions, while also recognizing the need to continue to push forward for legislation that will address this more comprehensively speaking, and that actually could create an enforcement mechanism. Because right now, the way it stands, if somebody violates this policy, we're not sure what the repercussions are for violating the policy, besides just potentially finding out, if we can get access to the records, that is, that the policy was violated. And then we're not sure what steps would be taken to rectify that situation, to make sure that appropriate actions were taken to address that matter and to stop the abuse of taxpayer dollars in that instance. So I think that appropriate management, oversight, accountability measures with enforcement as part of that are really necessary, and I think that legislation can provide that. I also think that an executive order strengthens these policies by putting them into regulation as an order rather than just the policies and guidelines. So, again, great step in the right direction. Very, very happy with the actions that have been taken. It's been a long time in the making, but we do need to make sure that we continue to push forward for those actions to be taken across the board.
Auditor, do you or your office reach out to Governor Baker or officials in his administration about to clarify whether he uses NDAs despite having an informal policy? And do you think, based on your findings, that his administration effectively lied about having it?
So our office works with state agencies that, the leadership that exists in those state agencies currently, am I correct in saying that? We don't reach out to, yeah. So we worked with the Healy administration and this current governor's office to access records just like we would in any state entity, regardless of who's at the helm. If I'm in this office and you want to get access to records from 8 years ago, I'm assuming you'll contact me and not the prior auditor to get access, because those records are public records that exist in the agency and don't follow the person outside of the office. We worked with the current office of the governor.
Are you hoping
Thank you.
this is going to sort of revive, resurrect the efforts to ban NDAs in state governments? You mentioned the bill.
Absolutely.
The lawmaker.
Absolutely. And look, Governor Healy coming out and saying very strongly how she feels about the abuse of NDAs is a big win for this Commonwealth. Her recognition of that issue, definitely I hope to see that her recognition of that issue results in her coming alongside of this office and advocating for the passage of the legislation to ban them across state government. Now, we did file as an office a bill to ban the abuse of NDAs to cover up illegal or unethical actions such as harassment, discrimination, retaliation, outright corruption across state government. We did that from this office officially because our office audits state government. We don't audit municipal government, or federal government, and we don't audit the private sector. I've long advocated for reforms across the board in all these entities. Our office did limit it to state government and starting there based on the call of this office. But I would love to be able to go in and to advocate for the passage of this legislation alongside of additional meaningful reforms in any way, shape, or form possible when we go before the legislative committee hearing to talk about these things. I hope Governor Healy will join me for that hearing.
Auditor, could you talk a little bit more about the report that you said is going to come out? Like, what's the timeline for that, and is it also kind of troubling, or can you give us some nature of if this is also widespread practice in colleges, universities, other quasi-agencies, if they're also have this pattern?
I can't speak to that at this time, Allison, but I'll definitely be in touch as we get some information moving forward regarding a potential release date. I just want to comment, I know it repeatedly says this in the report. It has been incredibly challenging to get documents that we need in order to meet the timelines that we would like to meet in order to move these things forward and get them out to you. But when it takes several months to get access to documents, that puts our auditors behind by several months, and it can just create issues across the board. So we're hoping that moving forward, we will start to see documents come in at a more timely rate, and that way we can move these out to you a little bit more quickly.
I just wanted to ask you actually about that. So are you working with the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office to make sure that some of these documents are publicly available and available to you, and if certain agencies are withholding them, that they're held accountable as well?
We do send over different issues to the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Supervisor of Public Records, if there is a discrepancy between what is being claimed and between what is actually the reality. Generally speaking, by the time those issues get resolved, we have at times moved on from the issue already, and we will cite a scope limitation. Because if they don't have the record, the Secretary of State coming in generally doesn't make it so that they do have the record. It's more of an issue where the Supervisor of Public Records would cite them in some way or put them on notice about the fact that the record may have been inappropriately destroyed. So there is a process that folks have to go through for destroying public records as a board, that they have to go through, ask permission, obtain permission, and then they're able to destroy public records. I know a lot of folks have come to us and said, well, it's been over 6 or 7 years, that they're not required to have anything. That's actually not the case. There are different public records standards. Some public record standards call for 6 years or so, others call for 25 years, and other records are required to be maintained permanently. But what we really have been finding is that in a lot of these state agencies and entities, a lot of folks appeared not to have known about those different standards or known about a process. So I think that just speaks to the need for additional training, management, and oversight to make sure that folks understand fully what's going on. Because, in some cases, it could be purposeful that these documents were being destroyed and suddenly went missing. But in other cases, it could genuinely just be, some staff not knowing that they were required to keep certain documents in a certain manner for a certain amount of years. So we don't want to conflate those two things. But the issue of not knowing, I think that's the issue. We don't know what we don't know. And we don't know quite a lot due to the poor record keeping across state agencies and offices. So I'm hopeful that this administration, alongside of that ban regarding NDAs, will also implement, some sort of management system, training system, whatever the administration decides to do, around making sure that folks understand in these agencies what's required, how things are supposed to be done, what needs to be reported to the comptroller's office, and just the importance of maintaining documentation so that we can prevent the abuse of our tax dollars and these agreements.
It's my understanding that the Senate has a rule that I think you wrote, or a huge part of the 2019 to get rid of the NDAs. Is this one of the rules that you're seeing being broken? I know it's not the whole time frame up to now, just until the end of 2022. Do you have any indication of if that's being followed?
Well, you may have heard we're not really getting access to any of the documents we've requested out of the legislature currently, and they are violating the law and not cooperating with our office. They're coming in to meet with us in a short while here. I forget the exact date, but they will be coming in to meet with my audit team to again reiterate their rationale for breaking the law. That is not viewed by our office as following the law in any way, shape, or form. A meeting to tell us yet again about all of their concerns and why they're not following the law has not resulted in any documents that they're required to produce to our office actually being produced. We have not requested non-disclosure agreements in particular from the House of Representatives or State Senate at this time. We have requested settlement agreements and also financial documents. So certainly nothing that is a violation of the separation of powers, that interferes with any of their work during the day or anything like that. And I'm hopeful that eventually our lawmakers will come to see the value in following the law.
Auditor, when are you meeting with the Senate, and what's your strategy for the House when they've said that the information you're initially seeking is already publicly accessible?
It's not. If any of you have access to the settlement agreements that we've requested, feel free to send them our way. We would be very grateful. But I can also just say, Allison, that regardless of whether something was or wasn't accessible, which the documents that they're saying are accessible to our office or not, we don't have copies of the full audit reports, for example. We have redacted versions. We have shortened versions that don't have all of the information that we've requested. You know, it's, even if it was made available publicly somewhere, it's the entity's responsibility to work with our office under statute and actually provide that documentation for us. We've never had a state entity say, oh, sorry to the audit team, you know, it exists somewhere out there, go find it yourself. That's not operating in a spirit of cooperation, and that doesn't serve the taxpayers. So again, we hope that lawmakers will follow the law.
For your post-audit review, when are you going to be conducting that, and who are you getting in touch with? Is it only the governor's office to see how they've gone through these policies, or are you also reaching back out to all those executive agencies you listed before?
So it's my understanding that because this audit was conducted of the comptroller's office and governor's office, but included all of these different executive offices and agencies, that it would be the comptroller's office and the governor's office that we would follow up with directly to get feedback of how things are going across the state agencies. Good? Any other questions? All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.